Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're diving into a topic that comes up constantly for people thinking about retirement security: buying gold using IRA money. Our guide here is a bulletin from an independent educational resource, one that really focuses specifically on gold IRAs and precious metals. So, our mission today is to pull out the key insights from this source. What are the rules, the regulations? What are your actual options? The idea is to get you the essential info you need quickly to figure out if gold fits into your retirement strategy based on what this resource says.
Exactly. And this bulletin, it provides a pretty clear path. Starts
Yeah.
with the basics, then it walks through the steps, the rules, potential benefits, risks,
Mm,
all that. It's trying to make something complex feel a bit more accessible.
perfect. So let's jump right in. The foundation. When we talk IRA money for gold, what is an IRA in this context? How does gold even become an option?
Well, fundamentally, an IRA is a tax-advantaged retirement savings account. We know that. But for holding physical gold, your standard IRA won't cut it. The source really hammers this home. You need a specific type, a self-directed IRA.
Yeah.
That's the key. Because that's the vehicle allowing you to invest in alternative assets, things beyond just stocks and bonds.
Ah, okay. So that's the door opening. The bulletin mentions these alternatives, things like real estate, private equity, and crucially for our conversation, precious metals. That's the gateway.
Precisely. Without that self-directed setup, you just can't hold those kinds of assets within the tax-advantaged wrapper of an IRA.
All right, so someone's interested, they like this flexibility. What's the very first practical step the source says to take if you're considering a gold IRA?
Okay, the bulletin lays out a clear sequence. First step,
Yeah.
choose a reputable gold IRA company. This company is positioned as, well, pretty central. They oversee the setup, they work with the custodian for you, and they help you actually buy the approved gold.
Sounds like they're the project manager almost. What's next after picking the company?
Next, you need a custodian. Now, this is an entity that specializes in self-directed IRAs, specifically those holding alternative assets like gold. Their really critical job is ensuring everything stays compliant with IRS regulations. Often, the gold IRA company you picked can recommend a custodian they work with.
Okay, so you've got the company, you've got the custodian.
Then the gold IRA company helps you actually set up the self-directed IRA account itself.
Account setup. Makes sense. Then obviously you need money in it.
Right, funding's next. And once the funds are there, you work with your gold IRA company to buy the IRS-approved metals. And the final step in this initial phase, those metals have to be stored in an IRS-approved depository. That's key. It's probably worth mentioning the author's background here, which the bulletin notes. 20 plus years in financial markets, over 15 just in gold IRAs, evaluated tons of companies. That experience really explains why they put such emphasis on choosing the right company first. Seems like they guide you through all these steps.
Yeah, that background definitely adds weight to getting that first step right. Now, you mentioned IRS regulations quite a bit, especially storage. This isn't like buying jewelry, right? There seem to be very specific rules.
Absolutely. The source is crystal clear on this. Investing in gold through an IRA is strictly regulated by the IRS. You have to follow their rules for it to count. One big one is purity. The gold itself has to meet strict standards, typically 99.5% pure or better. And the point you raised about storage, it must be stored in an approved depository. No exceptions.
So forget the idea of buying some approved gold coins and just sticking them in your safe at home for your IRA.
Completely out.
Yeah.
The bulletin explicitly says you cannot just buy gold and keep it at home. Storage has to be handled by a third-party, IRS-approved depository, usually arranged through your custodian. It's fundamental for compliance.
Okay, got it. Self-directed IRA, company, custodian, purity, storage rules. Check. Now, funding. How does the money actually get into this new gold IRA?
The bulletin covers two main ways: transfers and rollovers. A transfer is usually simpler. That's moving funds directly from one IRA account to another. You never actually touch the money yourself. It goes straight from custodian to custodian. So because you don't take possession, there aren't typically tax penalties or those tight deadlines. You just tell your current custodian where to send it.
Straightforward enough. What about rollovers?
Rollovers are a bit different. That's when you actually take the money out of a retirement account, maybe an old 401k or another IRA. The critical thing here is the rule. Once you get the funds, you have exactly 60 days to deposit them into your new self-directed IRA. Miss that window, and you could face taxes and penalties.
Ah, the famous 60-day clock
Yeah.
ticking away. The source also mentions two types of rollovers.
Yes, there's a direct rollover. That's where the old custodian sends the money directly to the new one. Again, you don't handle the funds. Then there's the indirect rollover. That's where the money is paid to you, and you're responsible for getting it into the new IRA within those 60 days. The bulletin generally suggests that transfers and direct rollovers are simpler, less risky. You avoid potentially messing up that 60-day deadline with an indirect rollover.
Makes complete sense. Avoiding that 60-day stress sounds like a good idea if possible. Okay, so we've covered the how, setting it up, rules, funding, but let's zoom out. The bulletin calls gold a safe haven. Why would someone specifically look at gold for their retirement portfolio?
Well, the source really ties it to history. Gold's been seen for, well, centuries as a store of value, something that holds its worth, especially when markets or currencies get shaky. It's about offering some stability, some security when other things feel uncertain. The specific benefits listed, diversification is a big one. The idea that gold often moves differently than stocks and bonds, so it can act as a hedge against things like inflation or currency losing value.
Right, so when the dollar buys less, gold might hold its purchasing power better. Is that the idea?
That's the core concept behind the inflation hedge, yes. Security is another point. The source mentions its history of maintaining value, protecting against sharp economic downturns. And there's potential for growth, too. They do add the standard disclaimer, past performance isn't a guarantee of future results, but they note gold has shown an upward trend over the long run.
And how does it fit in with market volatility, the ups and downs?
That's about mitigating volatility. The source points out that during turbulent times when maybe stocks are falling, gold is often seen as holding its value better, which can be, as they put it, crucial for protecting retirement savings from those big, unpredictable market swings. Though it's important to remember gold prices fluctuate too, based on global factors.
So it sounds like it's less about hitting home runs and more about providing some balance, some stability to the whole portfolio. Now, since it's an IRA, taxes are always a big deal. How does the tax side work for a gold IRA?
Right, the source explains it offers similar tax advantages to traditional IRAs. So depending on your situation, contributions might be tax deductible. And really importantly, the growth within the IRA is tax deferred.
Tax-deferred growth.
Exactly. You're not paying taxes year after year on any increase in the gold's value while it's sitting in the account. That lets it potentially compound over time.
That's definitely a major benefit for long-term savings. What about when you actually take money out in retirement?
Well, like most traditional retirement accounts, when you take distributions in retirement, that money is typically taxed as ordinary income. And the usual early withdrawal penalties apply if you take money out before age 59 and a half, on top of the income tax.
Okay, understanding those tax rules is vital. Let's pivot now. The actual investment options inside the gold IRA. Once it's funded, how do you actually buy the gold?
So the bulletin lays out a few approaches. The most direct way is buying physical gold, actual coins and bullion. And again, they stress those strict rules. It has to meet the IRS purity standards, usually 99.5% or higher, though American Gold Eagles have a specific exemption. And it must be stored in that IRS-approved depository. Can't say that enough. The source gives examples like American Gold Eagles, Canadian Gold Maple Leafs, specific bars from recognized mints.
So you can't just buy any old gold coin. It has to be specific investment-grade stuff. What about options that aren't physical metal?
Yeah, that's where things like gold ETFs, exchange-traded funds, and mutual funds come in. These give you exposure to gold's price movements without you having to deal with storing the physical metal. Gold ETFs generally track the gold price. They trade on stock exchanges, so they're liquid, easy to buy and sell. Mutual funds might invest more broadly, maybe physical gold, maybe gold futures, maybe even mining stocks. But the source does point out, with ETFs and funds, you introduce something called counterparty risk.
Counterparty risk. What exactly does that mean here compared to just owning the metal?
Well, with physical gold, you own the actual tangible asset. Counterparty risk means you're relying on the company running the ETF or fund. There is a risk, however small, that that entity, the counterparty, could have financial problems or even fail. That could potentially affect your investment, even if gold's price is doing fine. It's a different kind of risk.
Right, risk related to the manager, not just the asset itself.
Exactly. And finally, the source also mentions investing in gold mining stocks.
So buying shares in the companies that dig the gold up, not the gold itself.
Precisely. It gives you exposure to the gold market, sure, but the bulletin warns these carry higher risks. A mining stock's value isn't just about the gold price. It's heavily tied to how well that specific company is doing their operations, management, finding new deposits, costs, all that. The source really emphasizes doing your homework on individual companies if you consider that route.
Makes sense. Company risks on top of the gold price risk. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground here. The structure, the rules, funding, the why behind gold, taxes, and the different investment options. As we kind of wrap up this look at the source material, what are the final key takeaways or advice it offers?
One practical point is about how much gold to hold. The source mentions a common guideline often cited as maybe up to 10% of your portfolio.
Hmm.
The thinking is that amount can give you diversification benefits, that hedge, without putting too many eggs in one basket, especially an asset that behaves differently. But they're quick to add, that's not a hard rule. The right amount for you really depends on your personal goals, your tolerance for risk, and how long you plan to invest.
And it also mentions strategy, right? Like long-term versus short-term thinking.
Yes. A long-term strategy, the way the bulletin describes it, is mostly about using gold for that hedging, stability security, over many years, holding it into retirement. A short-term approach is more speculative, trying to make quick gains from price swings. The advice is clear. Align your strategy with your overall financial goals, and really importantly, talk to a financial advisor to tailor it to your specific situation.
And the source even gives you a kind of checklist, some questions to ask yourself before jumping in.
It does, yeah. Things like, okay, what is a goal IRA really? How does it work?
Yeah.
Is my portfolio diversified enough already? What percentage makes sense for gold, if any? And am I aware of all the fees involved? Fees are important too. But the big final message from the bulletin is really about doing your due diligence. Always do thorough research using good sources like this one we've been discussing, and definitely get personalized advice from qualified financial professionals. Your situation is unique. Your goals are unique. Let that guide your decisions.
That feels like very solid, responsible advice to land on. So we've walked through this educational bulletin, defining the gold IRA, the steps to set one up, clarifying those non-negotiable IRS rules, how to fund it, the reasons someone might consider gold, the tax side, and the different ways to invest.
Yeah, and if you connect it all back, the source really presents gold as one potential tool.
Hmm.
A tool for diversification, for maybe adding some security when things feel uncertain. It's not positioned as the only answer for retirement, but perhaps a researched component within a wider strategy,
Yeah.
aimed at maybe a bit more peace of mind.
Peace of mind, especially for retirement. That's a powerful concept. So taking all this in the rules, the potential reasons, the risks, the sources focus on security and diversification. Maybe the final thought for you to consider as you reflect on your own path is this. In your current retirement plan, how much is truly built to hedge against those big economic factors you can't control? And what role, if any, could diversifying into something like gold potentially play in strengthening that defense for your future? Something to think about as you chart your course.